Welcome to a Questions from the Closet exclusive. I'm Charlie Bird.
And I'm Ben Shalatti. We're between seasons right now, and we decided to do a really fun episode we've wanted to do for a while. So today we're joined by Sarah Kellar... Darn it. Sarah Kellar Langford.
Yeah. Hey, guys.
So, Sarah, you've been on before.
Yes, I have. Twice.
Tell us what's been up in your life since we last talked.
Well, I recently moved to San Antonio, Texas. I live 3 blocks south of the Alamo, and I have a little store 50 yards away from the Riverwalk that I run with my father. We are jewelers and metalsmiths, and yeah, I'm developing my artist, learning how to run a business, meeting lots of really cool people. So, at me, I can make your jewelry.
I love that. Proud of you. Happy for you.
Thank you.
I'm excited for this episode. We've actually tried to do this a couple times. Today we're talking about what's it like to be on a pedestal. Mm-hmm. And Sarah for like a while has been like, I'm so interested in interviewing you and like really getting down to the nitty gritty of what it's like to be Ben and Charlie. Mm-hmm. And that's like really kind of you. And I'm like, do people care?
Yeah.
If they don't, they can listen to radio.
Don't turn it off now.
Well, I think that like both of you, like for the sake of like the podcast and what it is that you do, you have to present a certain amount of like confidence about who it is that you are and like what it means and like how you go about doing that. And I think that it's important for people to understand not just like the humanity, but the process in which like your humanity comes out, for better or for worse. I don't know how to say this any nicer, but as great as it is to be you, I know sometimes it sucks to be you too.
Mm-hmm. Like you sucks to be us.
Well, yeah. Well, I think like you have the like happy, unhappy responsibility of no matter what it is that you do, that there will always be a relatively large faction of people that are deeply unhappy with the decisions that you make.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
You know, yeah. And I think it's important to me to like bear that out a little bit. And in this space of like coexistence and like embracing one another, where do all of you fit into that and like the reality of your experience? And so yeah, let's get into this.
Let's dive in.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So let me just start with this. Like, when the title of this episode is like, what is it like to be on a pedestal, right? So let's start with that. Like,
the view is great.
What do you mean, Ben?
I'm just making a joke about how pedestals being high or high. But we get to see a lot of things.
Right.
And we get just people who email us and talk to us, like we get to see a lot of diverse experiences and a lot of, I think we might see the landscape in a way that people might not, who aren't so public.
Right.
Because so many people come and talk to us and share stories and experiences.
Yeah, I think the publicity of it kind of like brings connections. And I love the way you worded that, because we really do, like in this like kind of tumultuous, polarized space. I feel like, I mean, obviously it's not like we're seeing everything, but like I know what different groups are thinking and what different people are going through. And it's really beautiful to hopefully kind of bridge some of that, but it's also kind of overwhelming to know like how much pain and suffering and like misconception there is.
Yeah. And people come in, like if we do something that's like wrong or something like views is wrong, like then we're told about that. And so then given like more information. So I feel like we get to see a lot of things, even though of course we don't see it all. But I think that's part of being on a pedestal. Like we just have this view of a landscape that we wouldn't have had if we just
right. But wouldn't you say that the inverse of that is though people really probably don't get to see you, like they get to see a very specific side of you, but they don't really get to, the irony of that is you're actually really not being seen very well.
I mean, you're on the pedestal. So and I'm thinking of like the David sculpture by Michelangelo. It was initially like sculpted to be very high up.
Right.
And so when you look at it in person, it's on a little bit of like a platform, but it's pretty low, much lower than the artist intended. And so the proportions look a little bit like lanky and off. But if you're to lift it up to where it was supposed to be set initially on like, I can't remember where it was, like up on a cathedral high, they've like, I've seen a digital rendering of it. It looks perfect. Right. And so it's almost like the inverse of that. I think sometimes we're like, maybe because of like the pedestal position that we're in, people can see us, or I feel like people can see me, but it's not always like the most accurate because it's not eye to eye, it's not face to face. And that height difference kind of toys with the perception.
Yeah.
Right.
Can I give you an example of that?
Yeah.
So I recently gave a fireside, and there was a DesNat person there.
Oh.
And for those people who don't know what DesNat is, like this really alt-right conservative
Deseret nationalists.
yeah, conservative members of the church. And so this guy was at my fireside, and he live tweeted the whole thing. And then I found the thread after. Someone told me about it. And so we read through it together, and it was basically just like this great summary of my talk.
Wow.
Like, it was great. It was really good. I was just like notes on my talk, basically. And then people were commenting like, oh, Ben must have turned a new leaf. Like, he's so much more faithful now, blah, blah, blah. Like, I've been giving the same fireside for 3 years. But just like, they saw me as one thing, but then like when they had a little bit of access to what I was actually saying, they're like, oh, Ben's great. Not that I would like love for them to like be like, oh my God, Ben's great. But
It's not your target audience.
yeah. But they weren't seeing me, and then they got an opportunity to see me.
Right. Well, it's interesting. Like I think that's like beautiful, right? That idea of like, well, they came up close to you and they actually saw you. But something that Charlie said about this idea of perfection is interesting to me, because I think we do this to everyone. Anyone that's in like a public space, we project an idea of perfection or an expectation of perfection. But it's interesting where you're at, that what perfection actually is an application is so wide in this space. It's so different. Like it's when anyone, like when I Google, if I have a bloody nose, what I need to do about a bloody nose, it's like pretty straightforward. I push some tissues up my nose. It stops the bloodiness, put some pressure. Don't tip my head back because I don't want to gag on the blood. And that's how you take care of a bloody nose. But if you Google the intersection of like faith, LGBT, and then throw in the LDS keyword Mormon in there, it is such a wide swath of opinions. And not only is it wide, it's so extreme. Mm-hmm. It is so extreme. You have like going to hell over here. You have going to heaven over here. You've got celibacy. You've got self-loathing, internalized homophobia.
Yeah, mixed orientation marriage, nurture, nature.
Everything. There's so many things, and it's so confusing. And in every single one of these ideas, we have about 1 billion subgroups to represent each of those ideas and like to push forward those ideas. And those are all being thrown at you with, again, here's the template of perfection. This is how you can responsibly, with your platform of privilege as gay white males.
Yeah. So you're saying that for each person, there's like a different answer that they would want us to give.
Yeah.
When in reality, there's not really an answer, and we're just trying to live within it.
Right.
I feel that often.
So, I mean, what do you do? I mean, first of all, even before what do you do, like, what is that like? What is that like when, I mean, Ben, before you looked at the thread, the does not thread, like, what were you expecting?
I was expecting a lot of hate from them, and a lot of maybe name calling, and maybe fears that I'm like leading people astray and destroying lives.
And why would you expect that?
Because they've said like that before.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's
past experience informs that if you go on, like I deleted Twitter because when I go on Twitter, people either say fake things about me or mean things. And I'm like, okay, great. It's not great to read, you know?
No.
Honestly, just barely. On the way here, I was trying to get a picture of myself because I'm speaking at a thing tomorrow and I needed like a headshot. And it's just easier to Google it than go through all the files on my computer to try to find it. So I like Google myself, find the image I need, and it was attached to a Reddit thread about me. And I was just like, oh, I shouldn't do this, but of course I'm going to, right? Because there I was.
Obviously, you have to.
And there were 18 comments about this article that was written about me a little bit ago. And so here I am 2 hours ago, right? Reading, bless Charlie, he's doing such good work. We love him. Wish him well on his journey. Reading, Charlie is so brainwashed. He needs to leave the church. They're controlling him. This is disgusting. I'm reading, gay people aren't real. This man was obviously abused when he was a kid, you know? And so I'm like, all of these people that have never met me, don't know me at all, have access to this photograph of me, which represents a gay member of the church who wrote a book and is, you know, and it's just like, I'm not a human. I'm just something to dissect.
Yeah. And like all of people's feelings about this issue are then put onto you.
You become
like the nexus of this conversation.
Exactly. Like I'm the representation of that whenever they want me to be. Right? Does that make sense?
Okay. So when do you mean when they want you to be?
Well, I feel like it happens in different times. Like like if someone needs a chess piece, they can pull me for whatever they want, right? So we can have a conservative member who's talking to a gay person who's left the church and is like, well, Charlie Bird still says, why aren't you doing that? And then I can have that same person be like, well, Charlie Bird's being used against me because his life, you know, and it's like...
Or someone could be like, Charlie's dating a guy, therefore he's a cautionary tale, so watch out for him.
Exactly. And so like whatever they want to prove, I feel like someone can take a little piece of me, just take off that little chunk and use it to argue their point, rather than look at like the whole data set of like everything of who I am.
So there's like cherry picking going on for people's own agendas. So do you feel like, I mean, when did you start? What is it like to be the yardstick by which everyone measures success or failure in this space?
That's a really good question.
Yeah. So if people are listening to this, there's like an 80% chance they're like a woman in their 40s or 50s.
Who's like feeling really empathetic, and we really love you. Thank you so much.
The moms have become our biggest fans somehow.
That's really sweet.
And I talk to a lot of these moms.
Yeah.
And so, you know, this yardstick. So I have people who say to me like, Ben, I love you and adore you, and I don't want my kid to be like you. Like, I want them to just like be able to find love, and like I honor your path, but like I don't want my kid to be you. And that's like a kindness, but it's a lot to put on to me.
Yeah, it is.
And then other people are like, oh, I just wish my kid could be like you. And then I have to say like,
I feel like that one's even worse.
And that is worse. And then I have to be like, oh, well, here's why that's problematic. And like love your kid for who they are. And we have a good conversation about that.
Like your kid shouldn't be me. They should be them.
Yeah, exactly. And so people just kind of, I think it's people like have these expectations for like their kids or their own lives or their friends and family. And then they see, it's not like they're like, okay, this is what Ben and Charlie are doing, therefore people should be like them. It's like, oh, this is what feels comfortable to me, and Ben or Charlie represents that, and then I'm going to use that as an example.
Yeah. And I think we've even mentioned this before, I think, but I will have like gay individuals talk to me and be like, my mom's mad at me because I'm not more like you, and that sucks to hear, and so I hate you. And I'm like, that does suck, you know, that's a horrible thing, and it's also not my fault. Like, it's, what am I trying to say? Like it's not my fault if someone's mom is using me as a weapon. Right. Like, I inherently am not a weapon. I'm just trying to share my story and like be authentic, right? And it's sad because they're like, you need to be quieter because you're being used as a weapon. But I'm like, that's not my fault. And if like,
well, it is interesting that like we do that to people, because I'm trying to think right now, I'm like racking my brain. Is there any other situation or like application where, for lack of a better word, I'm not calling you all tools, but like where a tool,
we're tools, but different kinds of tools.
Like a tool or an object is like blamed for like how other people use it.
I think it does happen, and I think it happens a lot in our culture. Like in church culture, there's like, this person got married young and you can too, and you should too, and this person does this, and they wore this prom dress, and so your prom dress should be equally as modest. Like, I think we do that.
But like, why do we often do that? Like,
I don't know.
But honestly, like seriously, why do we do that? Like, why do we like look to someone else? Like in our church, like one of the core principles of our church is agency. And the only person we're asked to be like is the Savior. That is the only person. Like, I'm not even asked to be like President Nelson or like Sister Eubank, whom I adore and like love. Sister Eubank. Right?
Can I ask you to be like Sister Eubank? I want to do that.
I would love to be like Sister Eubank, but I'm not. There's nowhere. I don't have like I'm not doctrinally asked to do that. I'm not asked to. I'm only asked to emulate the Savior. So like, where did we get this idea where we needed to find someone else and project them onto another individual and say, be like them, like be them.
Yeah. I think it just comes from people. So I have this, this like spectrum I've been thinking of like from fear to like confidence and trust. And people who are on the fear side, like when they're afraid, that's where the problems come in, when they're not like trusting or when they're not confident. And so like either in themselves or in the people that they love. And so when people feel uncomfortable with people who leave the church, who are LGBTQ, then they look at me, they're like, well, Ben's staying, and that makes me feel comfortable.
I think you said something really important. Like you said that they do it when they're scared. And I think maybe they choose you because they think you're not scared.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, there's a whole other group who thinks he's scary.
And so
Right.
And so I think
You can't win.
And so I think this is why this comes up in this context. So the church is like such a big thing in people's lives who have ever been a part of it, whether they're out of the church or in the church. Like it is a big thing because someone who leaves the church, their loved ones, their friends are still part of it.
It influences so much of development and social and
And so if LGBTQ issues are uncomfortable for a lot of church members. So if I'm gay and I'm in the church, then they can like talk about this in a way that's more comfortable for them. They don't have to deal with all the discomfort because they're like, oh, obviously it's okay. Like this isn't a big deal. I don't have to deal with the discomfort of it.
Okay, so do you feel like the two of you are acting as like a meeting place for people in this conversation? They're like, we don't know very much about this, but we know who these two people are, so we're going to use them as like the starting point. And when you use those people as the starting point,
well, I think that's what we tried. Oh,
can I say something first?
Yeah.
So I think the problem here is when people don't actually listen to us.
Okay.
So for example, I'm very honest about my life. I'm honest about like complications and the difficulties and the hard decisions I have to make. You know, like back in March, I wrote an article like having a crush on this guy and then not being able to like move forward with that. And so if someone like reads that, they're like, oh, this is like a tough thing. Like Ben's choices aren't easy. But then if someone's like, oh, active gay church member, great. Then they don't actually look at my life, then that's when it's problematic. But I think if people actually listen to what I'm saying and actually see my life as I'm sharing it, I think then they do step into the discomfort.
It's the proximity piece.
I've definitely referred people to both of your books page numbers when they said, well, how do they feel about this or why aren't they doing this? And I'm like, they literally address this in chapter 3, page 24.
So sweet of
you. Thank you.
Settle down.
To your point though, I think that's why I wanted to enter the space, and I think that's why we started this podcast, because we wanted there to be a point, because there's this uncomfortable space and it's polarized, and when something is polarized, by definition there is a ton of space in the middle, and if you're trying to bridge that, and it's hard too, because it's polarizing families. This subject I see quite literally ripping families apart, right? Because parents reject their children, and then the children reject their parents, and this keeps happening. And I was like, surely there's gotta be something in the middle, some sort of stepping stones to at least bring it closer. And so definitely, I would, that's why I started speaking up, because I wanted there to be a middle ground. I want there to be a middle ground for myself, because I am, like you said, the nexus of this polarization internally, because I have a testimony to the gospel and I love being a member of the church, and I'm gay, and both of those are irrevocable. I can't change any of those. And so where else can I be except the middle? But then because of that, almost by definition, it's easier to be polarized because everyone's on your side.
Right.
If you're on one side, it's you and everybody else with you against everyone else. And then when you're on the other side, the same thing happens. But when you're in the middle, you belong to both groups a little bit, but also both of them reject you at the same time. And so it's you really don't belong anywhere, and you're kind of rejected by everyone, because there's no finality, there's no wholeness in that space.
I mean, I can see that. I think that there's a group of, I would say my perception of most people that have an issue with the way that you live your lives tend to be ex-gay Mormons. And I would say predominantly, and when I say issue, I mean people who are
gay ex-Mormons.
Gay ex-Mormons.
Ex-gay Mormons.
Whoops, that's a really important.
I understand what you said. I just want to make sure that's clear.
We will refer you to our episode on conversion therapy.
And so all of a sudden, a very different podcast. And it's that groups of people tend to be comparative, relatively liberal in their belief systems. But I don't know if y'all have seen this whole thing that's been playing out with Liz Cheney, right, in Wyoming, where she chose to break away from the party line, even though all of her legislation and voting patterns have been strictly Republican, and I'm thinking far right Republican. And in this one area, she decided to call out Donald Trump as the January 6th hearings, and here she is being punished for it by losing by 80% in the primary in Wyoming. And I just want to say it, it's just interesting that in both of these groups that have very different ideologies and practices and executions, there still seems to be a very oversimplified expectation of like who our leaders should be and who our leadership
Who
should
belongs.
be.
Uh-huh.
And it's so frustrating to me because we will always be disappointed if we expect our leaders to be perfect. We will always be disappointed. And so like, why do we do that? Like, we're not perfect. Like we don't want to be.
I think when you say perfect, I would add, like, I'm thinking of as we'll be disappointed if we expect our leaders to believe and look exactly the way we do.
Right. Like, exactly. That's a very important like distinction.
Like perfect to us.
Right.
You know, which means the same.
And building off of that, you know, people who have left the church or feel like it's not the right place for them, you know, there's a lot of hurt and pain and difficult choices that come with stepping away from one's faith system and like that faith transition. That is hard. And here I am, a BYU employee, active member of the church, and I become like the personification of these things that have caused pain. And so I don't think it's like their fault that they are upset with me. Right.
But I also don't think that like anyone is entitled, like no one has like in their human job description to be like the human like punching bag for someone else's like trauma and grief. And I'm just going to say that like that's not fair.
Can I share an example of this?
Go ahead.
So as everyone well knows, I had like my honor code thing back in whatever, January, February, I can't remember.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been nice to move away from that, you know?
2022. Starting with the bang.
And, you know, that stirred a lot of things up. And here I am, like, I am a gay BYU student who fell into a relationship accidentally and then had an honor code meeting about it, right? And it was so interesting to see people's reaction to that because that group, like that gay ex-Mormon group, was vicious. Yeah. They were ferocious. And so I'm seeing on Twitter, people are tweeting and saying he should be kicked out of school. The honor code should have like clapped him. And I'm like, hold up. You are a gay rights activist advocating for gay BYU students. And yet you're advocating for a gay BYU student to be kicked out of school. Like, how? Like, how did that happen? And like that happens, like, honestly, like there are many cases where gay ex-Mormons have been way worse to me than any conservative church member has ever even thought to be. And I don't know why. And it sucks because like I'm in this space, like really trying to, it's like, I don't know. Does this make sense?
No, keep going. Yeah. Keep going. Like, why is it hard?
And may I add an additional perspective to that? I think, because I read a lot of those comments as well, and I think what people were saying was, if BYU and the church actually believe that, then they should kick him out. I don't think they were saying like oh, Charlie should be expelled.
That's not true.
Well, they did, like, actually. I read those comments.
I read some bad stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely people who.
But well, it was just because it was me, right? And they didn't like me because I didn't leave the church. Like, people just hate me because I don't hate the church.
Right.
So there's a group of people who will always hate me if I don't express hatred towards church and church leaders. And there will be a group of people who will always be uncomfortable with me if I don't say gay people are bad and it's a choice. And I'm never going to say either one of those things. Mm-mm. That's just like, I'm not going to go around hating someone or hating an organization or hating something that I love or that my family members love. And I'm sure I'm not going to tell people that being gay is a choice and that it's gross and that you just, you know, like, I'm not going to do either of those things. And that's what the polarized sides want. And so, like, being on that pedestal then as this, like, you know, higher up, like, visible public version of this space, it's just like arrows from both sides, and it sucks.
Well, I think it's interesting. That does sound really hard, but I also think it's like relatable. I think that if any one of those, I would like to believe that if any one of those people behind those comments were to like look at their own experiences, they would have to recognize that there's far more nuance than can fit in 270 characters on Twitter. And I think that it kind of sucks that the consequence of your living in nuance and in conflict of opinion, like owning that in yourself, that other people are demanding that you like reconcile that. Like, it's so interesting. It
feels like people take the same black and white mentality that they like critique in religion and just apply it to the other side.
It's true. Well, I mean, that is interesting. Like, I mean, that is like the consequence though of like being schooled in black and white thinking. You're just picking a different set of ideologies in which to apply it.
And it makes me sad. And to your point, Ben, like I try not to like feel like bitterness toward those people, even though like I read things and they don't know me and I don't know them, you know, but it does make me want to distance, right? But I realize that it's coming from a place of trauma too. And the space is hard because people's experiences with church and with BYU or with anything are built up in so many different levels. Whereas like my growing up in the church, like the way I taught the gospel and practiced in my family is probably different. And then my parents got divorced and my dad left the church. So my ideology shifted and like my viewpoint shifted. And then when I came out to a bishop, he handled it really well. And, you know, there's just a lot of influences that can influence where you end up
Such a wordsmith,
in your view of the space, you know? And yet we want to act like everything's the same, right? Like going to church is unsafe and it's unsafe for you when you're lying. And I'm like, it's not. Like going to church for me isn't unsafe. And when it does feel unsafe, I have to like figure out what to do with it.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think what you both are saying is like, I think it's important to like understand where people are coming from. Also, like you said, Sarah, you know, we can't excuse bad behavior, but I do think it's important to understand like where is that coming from?
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, go ahead.
And also like give space for people to like experience what they're experiencing. And it sucks when like someone's like healing journey or like trauma like comes out as like unkindness towards someone else.
Yeah, but I have a question. Like, do you feel like you're allowed to draw, like we talk about boundaries so much, like boundaries are important for relationships. Aren't you allowed to draw a boundary as like a public figure?
No.
I mean, about what people say about us, no. And I'm usually pretty bad with boundaries anyway.
Right, but we can, but I mean, isn't a boundary say like, I don't accept this? Like you can do that, but I don't accept this from you. Yeah.
But then that means you have to enter the conversation. And how do you enter the conversation with hundreds of thousands of people?
Right. But that's what I'm saying. Like why I think maybe it's okay to say something like, and I mean, push back against this if you want to. Well, it's okay to say, you know what, like I am not like your human punching drag for your trauma. Like that is not the part of like, that is not my responsibility or like a part of my mission or what I'm here to do. Yeah. I'm here to like testify. I'm here to like talk about my experiences. But like, I don't accept from you like your anger. I don't accept that. And I don't respect or accept like the responsibility for that.
Yeah. So honestly, like most of these conversations happen online.
Right.
So
I would love to do that.
But could we? No, I don't think that'd be effective.
But I mean, it's saying it's like right now. I mean, that's
I feel good. Like, I feel like the reason I'm feeling like fired up right now. And I think the reason is because I want to set a boundary, you know, and it's sad to me that probably a lot of the people that I would need to set a boundary with aren't going to listen to this.
Right.
But like, it does feel good to kind of express this because usually I just let it slide and think, you know what, like Godspeed, I'm going to live my life and what, you know.
Well, this is interesting. Like, I think this actually is a really good segue into kind of another kind of more interesting part of like your experiences. Do you feel that people feel entitled to more of your personal lives than you're willing to share?
Yeah.
Why? I mean, what? Tell me more. Like, honestly, what kinds of information do people feel that you've experienced that people feel entitled to about your lives?
Yeah, we both experienced where people are like, well, they didn't say this earlier, you know, like with the whole Charlie and Ryan situation. People were upset because Charlie didn't say something sooner. And, you know, Charlie was always honest. I never heard you lie. And I never heard you say that people should be doing something. Like, I never heard you say, like, people should be single. I never heard you say that. And yet people were really upset that you hadn't said something sooner.
And I mean, how much sooner did they want me to say it? Like,
right.
It happened.
and so I do think people feel entitled to know everything about our lives.
Yeah.
And we,
like in real time. It's like they want us to already have it processed and packaged and ready to go before we even have time to process and package it.
And not just like details about our personal lives or whatever, which I freely share anyway. But like all of our thoughts about anything that ever happens. And so I got a message from someone I don't even know a few days ago, like, I'm teaching this talk from General Conference. What are your thoughts on it? And I just said, I don't really want to talk about this, but best of luck. And she said, okay, thank you. And I was like, oh, I do want to say something. And I said, because she was like struggling with this talk, I said, this talk was long. And I'm sure
lack of boundaries.
Yeah. And I was like, this talk is long. And I'm sure if you're teaching this talk in a class, you can find plenty that you agree with.
That's nice.
Yeah. And I was like, so you don't just have to, yeah, anyway. But especially after Elder Holland's talk at BYU.
That's what I was just going to bring up.
Everyone wanted to know about, like, we received over 100 messages to the Questions in the Closet account. Over 100 in 2 days. And I responded to all of those messages.
Oh,
I can't believe you did that.
Yeah, every single one. And it was overwhelming. And I was so glad. I was like, just listen to the episode. We talked, like, I've already said everything I want to say about it. And so when people would say, well, what else do you think about this? Like, I said everything I want to say about this topic. So you can go listen to the episode.
Okay. Wait, you had something
Well,
to say.
I was just going to say, I'm not trying to sound like one up or pretentious, but like when that happened, I received like thousands of messages, like verging on tens of thousands. And it's just like, what are you supposed to do with that? And I think with that specifically, we released the podcast a couple days after that happened.
It was the day after.
Oh, really?
It hadn't even been 24 hours.
So in that whatever 19-hour period, my account was being called out by people like, why aren't you speaking up? Why aren't you talking about this? And I'm like, I'm actually a student at BYU. Like, I'm actually the one living this, and I'm actually the one being hurt and traumatized and scared and feeling awkward. And you're not. Like, you're not a student there. You're not a member of the church. And I need time to figure this out because this is impacting me and my life and my educational career. It's impacting my program. It's impacting my athletics. And I need a minute, you know? And it's just, yeah, like it's hard to always feel like no matter what happens, I immediately have to have an answer. And like you said, before you can even process it, like before I could fully process my relationship, people are like, why weren't you talking about it? Mm-hmm. Before I could, when General Conference happens, it's like, I'm supposed to be live tweeting that every thing. And like, sometimes I just don't want to talk about it. I want to talk about it with my brother and call my mom, and I want to go on a run in the mountains.
Right.
Yeah. And,
so go ahead.
Yeah. And I think it's important for people to understand, like, Charlie and I are on like different pedestals, if you will. Like, after Charlie's book came out and he was still editing the podcast, and I was doing like a lot less for the podcast because editing took forever. I was like, let me help you with something. So I started answering all of Charlie's Instagram messages.
Oh my gosh.
And I did that for like a month. So, and this was like almost 2 years ago.
And I have like 15 times that many followers now.
So yeah. So Charlie has way more followers. And then I was answering 10 times more messages for Charlie than I get now. Like even now. And so Charlie gets bombarded a lot more. Like, he's way more famous than I am.
Yeah.
Thanks,
and so we're having like different experiences here. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that's different is like I meet with a lot of people individually. So and Charlie just didn't have the time to do that.
Right.
Do that,
and I have made the time to do that, and have the time to do that. So yeah, you're gonna say something.
So what would you say to somebody who says, well, this sounds hard, but isn't this just like the consequence or what's required when you're like, this is what you have to give because you're visible. Like, this is the price you pay for fame,
It is. I really think it is. And I'm still willing to be in the space and be visible because I really care about this message and I care about the people on the back end.
Yeah. I went to lunch with your husband last summer. We had a great time.
What?
Scandal.
And he recommended Michelle Obama's book to me, which I then got on Audible. Well, not Audible, like I listened to the audiobook. And I was having this really tough, like I was getting called out like crazy, and a lot of it wasn't true. Like, it was just not true. And I tried to clear it up, and people were like, well, this is what we're hearing. I'm like, no, I was there. Like
I was in the room.
Like I am the source. And they're like, no, we've heard other things. Like, but I'm the source. Anyway, so like all this was happening. My world was crazy. As I was walking home, I started listening to like the next chapter of Michelle Obama's book, and she was talking about the first time she spoke publicly on the campaign trail, and all these crazy things happened. I was like, you know what? I am not nearly at the level of Michelle Obama. This is just what happens when you're in the when like people can see you when you're visible. And is that right? No, but it's what happens.
So if nothing changes with people's behavior, does it just like feel a little bit better knowing that you're able to say this?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm ranting right now.
That's okay. You get to rant.
And
you
like
angry.
even this is seriously, even now I'm saying things. I'm like, oh my gosh, if this person hears it, they're going to go off on the internet.
Well,
or if this person hears this, they're going to write another article about me.
Well, I just wish like.
And so like, I even still kind of want to censor myself because like the quieter you stay, the less people can talk about you. Right. But I mean.
Well, I wish wouldn't it be nice if just like one day a year you were really allowed to be human and like allow your humanity to come out? But you have to be angry too. Like as a friend right now, like it's just, we were just talking about this before the podcast. Like we get to be angry sometimes. We get to be sad. We get to, the grace in which you extend to others. Like I think we're able and allowed to expect it from other people to yourselves too. I mean, that's like a nicer way of kind of saying like, I'm setting a boundary. Like I don't accept this from you because I am also entitled to the grace in which I extend.
Can I share some more thoughts? Oh my gosh, I'm having a lot of thoughts.
Yeah.
I think though, when you're angry, church people don't listen. Like the minute you start sounding angry, that's when like maybe one group of people will listen more, but the other side just completely shuts off. And so it's like, still, it's kind of this constant balance of like, is my message strong enough, but palatable enough? And it's like, you know, there's this phrase that like I'm a gymnast. Sounds a tightrope.
Y'all have like, have you ever like heard the phrase like hold space for somebody, like holding space for somebody?
Not only have we heard the phrase, we've done it.
Right. Well, so one of my favorite things that like, well, I just want to like make sure, right? Because I've been using that word a lot more in the last year than I ever have in my life as I've been getting to know like my birth father. And there'll be moments in time where he's like at the bench creating like a piece of jewelry and he wants me just to sit and hold space for him. And really just to sit there and like watch him do things that maybe even necessarily as I'm learning, like, why is he doing it that way? Or why is he, as he's creating this beautiful work of art, where my only job in that moment is just to like hold space. And it, you know, it'd be really nice as like your friend, I would love to be able to, as I'm asking like the world, like if you don't agree with them, that's fine, but could you hold space for them? Like hold space for them to like work it out. You don't have to go celebrate them, you know, go to buy their books or go to their firesides, but like hold space for them, hold space for their humanity, hold space for like their path and their journey. I'm not even asking you to trust them, just like hold space, you know, that's it. Is it like the bare minimum, like as a human to human, like hold space. You know, I wish maybe that'll be the next thing I say to somebody that like is having a problem, just like hold space for them.
That's really, really pretty. Thank you.
And that's really kind. So I teach this diversity class at BYU. It's called Understanding Self and Others, Diversity and Belonging. It's a lot of fun. And we read a chapter from this book called Love Your Enemies by Arthur Brooks.
So good.
It's
such a good book.
It's so good. And he tells a story about like this person he knew from high school, like read his book and then sent him this email and like hated it. Like hated his book. And then Arthur, who's the author, like his natural response was like respond to every criticism he made. Then he had this light bulb moment where he was like, he read my book. And so then in the email, he just said, thank you for reading my book. Thank you so much. And then the guy responded and said, sorry, I was probably a little too critical. My apologies. And then he's like, we should get together for lunch. And they got together for lunch and had a great time. And so I really found like the principle that Jesus shares. It's usually true what Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, where, you know, he says, you know, pray for them. I don't know the words, but like pray for them that hurt you. No, pray for them that despitefully use you. I can't remember all the sayings, but I should have that memorized. But like we're supposed to love our enemies and pray for them. And I've had these moments where like someone is like so terrible to me, and I just like try and see them for a second, and then my heart just like breaks. I'm like, I'm so sorry that you're hurting.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so sorry that something's going on in your life. And I'm also like thankful that even though you disagree with me completely, like you took the time to like read my words and see me a little bit.
That's really beautiful, Ben. Like it's really beautiful. I think that is the source in which like miracles come. Like we've talked about this before. One of my favorite miracle of the Book of Mormon is the miracle of like the stripling warriors, because that miracle happened because their parents allowed themselves to be killed. And I'm not saying that that's what we should be asking ourselves to do, but like we should be loving our enemies. We should be, that's hard, because I don't want to say, because I don't think that as your friend, I don't think you should allow yourselves to be hurt by other people. I don't think that is the requirement. But I am very inspired that despite the way that people treat you, despite the way that people abuse your name, misappropriate your words, and choose to like lash out against you, that you ultimately both, even when you're angry, after the anger, both of you always choose kindness and you always choose empathy. which like actually brings me to like a really
Well, can
go ahead.
Can I just build off of that? So there's a song from Steven Universe, which I've never actually seen. And it's really cute and it's really short. And the line goes, I don't need you to love me, I love me. I don't need you to accept me, I accept me. But I want you to know you could know me if you'd change your mind. So change your mind. And so when I see people who are unkind to me, whether it be like someone who actually knows me or someone who just knows me like as this person who's written a book and has a podcast and whatever, I think if you knew me, I think you would like me. But I don't need you to like me because I already like myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You keep coming back to the theme of proximity, and I think that's really important. And one thing that I feel when this happens like the most to me, there is an element of humanity that I feel like is stripped from me. And I feel like I'll be discussed as a subject, and they'll and I think I don't like using the word celebrity because it's just weird, but like this I see this happen like on celebrity levels, right? Where it's like we know them as a disc or a photo or a movie, right? And I think a lot of times in this space I'm viewed as a picture on a book or an Instagram account, right? Or a video they watched once. And so I feel that element of humanity gets stripped from me, and then I'm talked about as if I'm not a real person that could actually like see this. And that happened recently. Like actually a couple times there have been people writing like more, I guess from more of like a church critique perspective about us, and like kind of like Charlie's Dangerous, and I don't know what the word you used, like about how it's scary and gonna lead people away.
Yeah.
And they wrote this and made a lot of assumptions about me that aren't true, and like it was really shocking to read about them like insinuating that I'm breaking the law of chastity and that like I don't value covenants or like and I was just like, what? Like how can anybody even like say this about someone and none of it's true? And it was really shocking to me. And I actually like talked to this person, and they're like, well, you're a public figure, so we can say whatever we want about you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was
That's
like,
what people say, that like, because you're a public figure, we can say whatever you want.
So it kind of comes back to what you were saying, like, how do you set boundaries when you're there? I don't know if you can, because people's like honest viewpoint is if you're putting yourself out there, you're not a human anymore. And like you're allowing yourself to be picked apart. And that was really shocking. And like, I tried to set that boundary, but there was nothing I could do about it. And I'm like, okay, like there's going to be like, I'll keep having negative tweets about me and about how I'm not actually gay. And I'll keep having negative articles about me about how I'm not actually a member of the church. So I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, same. Some of those articles have included me.
Yeah.
And one of the guys who wrote one of these articles about us, he had emailed us like, hey, I wrote this article. And I was like, why didn't you email us before? So we'd like talk about it. So then I was like, we should get dinner sometime. And so we got dinner and he paid for it.
A date?
It was a date. He's married. And so I mentioned that, like how hurtful it was. And he said, well, you're a public figure, so I can say whatever I want.
So it doesn't matter.
Yeah. But I thought we had a nice conversation. I think I scared him because of my confidence, and I told him how inappropriate he'd been. Mm-hmm. And he disagreed, and so there was tension from the disagreement, but still I thought we left amicably.
Mm-hmm.
But I wish there was a way to like add that human perspective beforehand too. And like, you can't fix every problem, but like, I would love like to the person who's commenting on a post I make that like, I can't believe you wrote a book about this, and this that I wrote about was nowhere to be found in my book. Mm-hmm. Like, I wish there was a way to like have people like do their research before they form opinions. And like, I think, you know what, like, I feel like this is kind of negative. Like, this is a lot of complaining. I think on one thing that like, it's made me a lot better at that, because when it happens to me, I recognize it. And like, I see me doing it to other people, and I'm like, I am not going to do this. I'm not going to say anything bad about this person, not even to like my mom. Well, I wouldn't ever say bad about anyone to my mom, but like, like my friend or Ben,
right,
without like actually getting to know who they are. So I think that's good.
Mm-hmm.
So
hard way to learn a lesson, though, I tell you.
Correct me if I'm like wrong here, but when I'm hearing all of you say and all of this, and I don't think that this is like complaining. I think this is like I think this is just like letting it out, right? It's just saying, you know what? I don't expect you to change your opinion. I'm not even asking you to change like what you think. I just want you to know that it hurts me. Like that when you say something, it hurts me. When you say something in this way, like it hurts me. And there's someone behind these accounts. There's someone behind this picture. There's like a person who is just like you, that is wrestling with the humanity, wrestling with like that this hurts. So think about that. And if you are okay with moving forward and like willfully hurting, saying something, knowing that it hurts me, that's fine, I suppose. But I just want you to know that it hurts me.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. And for people who are like feeling like defensive of us, like who are like, oh my gosh, we want to help. Like, how do we defend you guys? How do we help you guys? I think like these online conversations just aren't productive. So I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't waste your time. And honestly, mostly in writing, I wouldn't do this. But if someone says something that's like unkind about us, listen, hear what they have to say. Really make sure they see that you understand their concern, and then say, well, could I share my perspective and what I've heard from them? But I think for the most part, like defending us isn't the right thing to do. I think the most effective thing to do is just like share your own personal stories and whatever's leading that person's hurt, like help them find that healing. Because if people aren't hurt, if they're not afraid, if they're not feeling pain, then they're going to feel no need to attack us.
Well, I think the defensiveness is kind of what adds to the polarization too, because even the word connotes war, right? Or like challenge, and so like attacking versus like counterattack. And if you can tone down the temperature on that and just meet someone where they are, I think that's a way to step toward the middle.
Yeah. So the way to solve all this is just to heal the pain in the world.
Yeah.
Well, like heal the pain in the world, but like we just like be open to the idea that like my mind could be changed. That, like your mind could be changed and their mind could be changed. There's this really great it's like I don't know if it's like a podcast, but it's just an article that Malcolm Gladwell wrote and then he recently read. It's called Why Changing Your Mind is a Superpower. And why the ability to change your mind is a superpower. And I would like to invite everyone that's listening to this to like aspire to that superpower of having the ability to change one's mind about an individual, about an idea. But that's something that we should be aspiring to do.
And I think if we can do that, we can allow other people to change as well.
Yes.
And this is something I saw like before I entered this space, like before I wrote my initial article of like coming out. I had obviously like interacted with a lot of gay LDS media, but I also started looking at it from a perspective of what happened to this person socially, right? And so like I looked at like the Mormon and gay stories and like different people who had kind of been on the pedestal before and like how that impacted them. And one thing I noticed was if and when they changed their minds, like people wanted them to be snapshots. Like, this is where I'm at right now, and that's where I'm always going to be forever. Nothing's ever going to change. And then when they did change, even if it was just a slight change, even if it was a change that made them happier and feel closer to God, all of a sudden they were no longer trusted because everyone else wanted them to stay exactly there. And I think that kind of, like, I mean, I feel that too, like with conflict around me. It's like, why... I don't know, and I don't really feel like I've changed that much in my opinions or thoughts since
I don't think so either.
Since I came out. I actually think I've been incredibly, like, what I believe now about me and my life in the gospel is very congruent with how I was 3 years ago. But like allowing people to change and move in the space and leave and come back and go where, like, allowing yourself to change will also allow other people to change, which will keep us all from keeping each other in boxes.
Right.
And adding more judgment than is necessary.
Well, all of a sudden, like, Ben, I'm starting to feel the empathy that you talked about for those individuals, because someone who doesn't give grace to other people that way doesn't give grace to themselves.
Yeah, and like how painful is that?
Oh, dang it, you're turning me into a better person.
And because if you just like look at like what's going on in that person's life, they felt like they had to say that, it's just, bullies are bullies because they're unhappy. And I just want to like help them be happy. Yeah.
Both of you said something that's interesting to me, that you said that you both feel like you have maintained, for the most part, amidst all this change, like your opinions, your ideologies about how you feel in the space, like your beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you maintained your sense of self under the intense scrutiny that both of you have been experiencing the last several years?
So Charlie and I both have incredible support systems, like very good support systems. Like when I go home and see my family, like I'm the youngest sibling in my family. So I've always been like this little twerp, you know? And so when I go home, like no one respects me, you know, it's like I'm not some big deal. I'm just like little brother Ben, you know?
Yeah.
And so like with my family, it's like, like Ben's just Ben, you know? And then most of my close friends now, like I've known them for a long time. And so it's not like, you know, I'm just a normal person. Mm-hmm. And so, and with my coworkers, like when we walk across campus, people will like stop me and they like see it happen regularly. And and I was like, it's like, whatever, like who cares? Like, but then my coworkers, like, they just know me as like their coworker. Like,
Right.
like when I got this job, I didn't have a podcast or a book and few people knew who I was.
So you cultivated a support system. You cultivated a community of people.
Definitely. And, you know, people who are just like, and I have social media time limits on my phone, you know, so that I'm not on it too much. Mm-hmm. And I just like make sure like I'm living in my real life and that I'm like doing what I feel right with in my life. And I had this moment where just over a year ago, I went on this like 5-day hike with Steve Smith in the wilderness and a bunch of other people. And he made us all go spend 24 hours by ourselves. Right. And I was like not looking forward to this because I do not like being alone. And so I just had like a whole day with like just my thoughts. I remember laying on the sand by this creek and looking at the sky and watching the clouds go by, and just like letting whatever thoughts came into my mind. And the thought that I had was, and I thought this was odd, was I'm so grateful for the people in my life. But the people I like pictured then were my coworkers. Like so grateful I had them in my life. Because to them I'm just Ben, you know? And so I think what helps me stay grounded in like who I am is like people who just like take me as I am. And I talk to my friends Kevin and Allison in Tucson like at least every other Sunday. And they're the kinds of people where I can just like say, this is everything I'm feeling. Everything, like unfiltered everything I'm feeling. And they just like hold it with me. And then ask me questions about it. Like I don't have to be anyone but me with them. And I am so glad that I have not just them, but like dozens of people in my life who I can just be me. And they just like hold that with me.
That's beautiful, Ben. I'm really happy that you have that. That makes me happy.
Yeah.
I aspire to that. I'm not very good at cultivating that in myself, and I want to be better.
Yeah. And Sarah, you're one of those people where like I can just like unload. Seriously,
Yeah,
like I can just like unload. I mean, you don't always answer your phone. That's the problem.
I know. Well, that's what it is. We won't go into like the foibles of Sarah today. But that's really beautiful, Ben. It's just. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Charlie, go ahead.
And this is maybe a separate conversation, but sometimes I like yearn for the day when I don't have to like do anything publicly anymore. Like that just like sounds like a few Saturdays.
Nice.
Like a few Saturdays ago, like I didn't like write anything or like talk to anyone, but like my friends, and we just like watched TV, and I like went on a walk and like went to the gym. It was like this, and like I read scriptures with Charlotte, like this beautiful, just like normal person day. I was like, this was nice. I need more days like this. At the same time, like. There's a scripture in section 123 of the Doctrine and Covenants where it says that many are kept from the truth because they know not where to find it. And then it says, wherefore that we should waste and wear our lives and bring to light all the hidden things when we know them. Mm-hmm. And like we know things about the LGBTQ lifestyle experience that a lot of people don't know. Mm-hmm. And that ignorance is really damaging a lot of people. Mm. And so I'm happy to waste and wear out my life and bring to light all the hidden things that I know, so that people can understand the situation and be more educated.
That's beautiful, Ben.
Thank you.
Charlie, I'm very curious because we've like openly acknowledged the fact that you and Ben do have different experiences. Like Ben has like a relatively so comparatively experience of scrutiny that you do.
I have literally 100,000 followers fewer than Charlie.
Yes, exactly. Like how many followers do you have on Instagram right now?
100,000 more than Ben, apparently.
I checked yesterday, it was 114,000.
Okay.
I think today it's 116.
Well, Charlie's popular.
It was that refrigerator deer story that like took you over the top. Who'd have thought?
Which all things considered isn't that much.
Mm-hmm. But
it's more than any other gay member of the church, with the exception of David Archuleta or
Right.
somebody who's not out yet.
right. That's true. But like, so Charlie, with all of that, how do you maintain your sense of self under the intense scrutiny that you are under right now?
I have a couple thoughts on this. I relate a lot to what you said, Ben. And the only thing I would add is that I have some very select people in my life who call me out. If that, like I feel like I know myself really well. And there's a few people who know me equally or better than I know myself. And they see my heart, they see my energy, they know my soul. So if I am being or acting in a way that isn't congruent with that, they'll sit me down. And this has happened, I think of my older sister a couple times growing up. Like when my parents were getting a divorce, I started acting different and it wasn't me somehow. I wasn't doing anything bad, but I wasn't in my own mind. And like she pulled me aside and was like, hey, like something's off. Like this is what I'm seeing. And we talked about that. And I was like, oh, this is why that's happening. And I could kind of correct course. And with her and other members of my family, that's kind of happened throughout my life. And even still, they do that. And it's difficult, to be corrected in a way. But it's really beautiful because they're correcting me to myself, which is correct. Does that make sense? So there's that aspect. And then additionally to that, I grew up in a really small town and there aren't members of the church there. Like there are, but it's like
They're all birds.
they're all like, yeah, there's like a couple big families who've had like generations being members of the church. And then there are others, and like, we kind of like congregate because there's congregation. Everyone kind of moves closer to the church, but still like some of my best friends who were also members of the church lived an hour and a half away. And this isn't like an hour and a half in traffic. This is like they live 120 miles away from me. And
Wait, how fast are you driving if that's an hour?
So fast. I don't know, whatever. An hour and a half.
Okay.
And so like, it was never cool to have faith. It was never cool to be Mormon. It wasn't cool to not drink or to not have sex or to not look at photos that were being shared. Like, and I just had to be really comfortable and confident and being like, you know what, my beliefs are different than everybody else's. And that doesn't make me worse. Like I can be confident in those.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, like you're very used to being the exception in your space.
Right.
Like your whole life, you've always been that.
And I honestly think in a weird way, being gay has also done that to me too, because I am different and there's like different things about my energy that people read. And I've just always been a little bit different. And so if I'm different, I'm like, okay, this is on par. So there's that. And then the third one is I just think like, I've had experiences where I've prayed and I've like really talked to God and had answers and revelation that are just so unmistakable to me. And I think they like suspend me in the space. I almost think of like being a missionary. They say there's like a mantle of your calling and you're able to like perform at a level that's higher than you otherwise would be able to. And at some of the lowest moments of my life, I've really felt like I've been upheld by that. And it's really beautiful, and I can only give that credit to God.
That's beautiful. So if I'm hearing you correctly, both of you said, find your community, build your community, but like find the people that you love, but also that love you. Mm-hmm. Like that's important. Charlie, you also said embrace your peculiarity, like be different, or be okay with being different, like cultivate that. And then the third one is
to make one of those people God. Well, it's almost
when do you
like,
go to God and why?
I go to God often, but I really go to God sometimes. You know what I mean? And I'll like put effort into it and like really have something that I'm pondering, and I'll study, and then I'll take like, for me, it's not a question, but more of a feeling that is attached to a question. And I'll just like bring that feeling to God and almost like unfold my soul in that way and say, here, this is God, and this is something I'm scared of and that I don't know. And I've had moments where I'm imagining like a piece of coal, like there's this piece of coal in my soul, and then like God touches it, and then it like transforms into like, I mean, like the trope, like a diamond, right? And so it's like this glowing diamond now. And then I fold back up and bring that to me. And then if someone's saying like, you have coal in your heart, I'm like, no, I don't. Like, I do not. Because God has transformed that. And so honestly, I have a lot of coal in my heart still. Like, there's things I don't know. I am terrified about so much. And I don't know if I'll ever get all the answers in this space. And it's so scary. Like I was telling you guys before, last night I broke down and I cried for like an hour because there's this thing I don't know, and it's been so overwhelming to me. And yet I also have diamonds there. And so if someone's saying that's a piece of coal, I'm like, no, you got it wrong. I know what this is. And God did it. So it's right.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Charlie.
That's really beautiful. I heard two things in what you said, Charlie. I heard you say, like, find your purpose and rely on your purpose when you don't know where you're at or where you're going. And I also heard you say, like, find and recognize the hand of God in all things. It's kind of, it plays out. There's this kind of thing, I see it floating around on TikTok and Instagram, this idea of romanticizing one's life. And I have a friend who has had some of the hardest 6 months I've seen anyone have, moving to a new place, see money, divorce, issues with housing, and everything that could have happened to her has like happened to her in the last 6 months. And she posted today that she's like, I'm romanticizing my life. I'm sitting in this pile of beautiful, like, historic archives for my job, and I am looking through this, and I played a song on my iPod, like, she has an iPod still, on her iPod, going to work, and, you know, the right lyric came when I crossed the sidewalk, and I felt like it was Carrie Bradshaw. And I was just like, it's just another way of, like, for me, for saying she doesn't believe in God, but for me, it was just like another way of saying, okay, like, recognize, like, God in all things. For me, as like a person of faith, find God and recognize God. When I need to reset my compass or recalibrate, find God, and I'll find myself.
Yeah. Can I share two quick stories to go on with what you guys are saying? So, you know, being in this space is hard. You know, having people say things about us that are untrue or unkind, or that are true and unkind, it can be really hard, and it's really hard. But there's a story I want to share, and you know why to me it's all worth it. So. Back in March, I live close to the Provo Temple Classic, and I was walking around it. I go and walk there all the time, and I love that building. I know everyone thinks it's ugly, but it's like my favorite temple. I love it. I think it's beautiful. I'm so sad they're tearing it down. And if I could like write a letter and like,
should we protest?
No.
There already has been. Like,
if anyone would like listen to me, if I could get them to like save the Provo Temple, like I would do that. But anyway, that's beside the point. So I was like, I want to spend time in this.
Interesting.
I was like, I want to spend time in this temple before it gets torn down. I thought maybe I should be a temple worker again. And then I thought, I don't have time to do this. And I was like, you know what? I'll just act on the prompt. And so I went and talked to my bishop, and he read like the temple worker questions for me, like what it takes to recommend someone to be a temple worker. And one of the things was that they had to be respected in the community. And I was like, I don't know if that is me. But then he's like, but I feel confident in recommending you. So he put in my name, and then the temple contacted me, and I like agreed to get set apart. And I was like, I don't have time to do this. Like I can't do this. Like, I just don't have the time to do this. And I talked to like my dad about it, I talked to a bunch of people, and I decided I wasn't going to do it. Like, I was going to back out and not do it. But I just like couldn't say no. And so I pushed back my getting set apart date a week. And then that next week, while I was trying to make the decision, somehow the UVU Institute every semester does this 3-week workshop on like ministering to LGBTQ church members, and somehow ended up in my calendar. I don't remember how or why it was there, but it was in my calendar. I was like, I guess I should go to this thing. So I showed up like a half an hour late, and I walked in, and my friend Kyle's mom, Melanie, was there, Melanie Manwaring, and she was like on this panel of parents of LGBTQ kids. And I walked in and sat down, and she said, my friend Ben just walked in, and it is so good to see him here. And when she said that, I just had this like intense feeling that like I needed to work in the temple because someone had to see me there. And I thought, whatever happens, I got to be there. So I went and got set apart. I've been working there for 2 months, and it's been really wonderful. So that's one story. I've got one more story. So I teach Institute for my ward, like every 3 Tuesdays, and I post about it on my social media. And like 1 or 2 people who like just see it on social media will come, but usually it's just members of my ward. And my old seminary teacher came last week, and I've known her for 24 years. Like she's like family to me, and almost all the things about being gay she knows about from me, like mostly from me. And then this random BYU student who's going on a mission soon showed up. Like this young kid, not even out to his parents. And then they started talking after a class. And then I was like, do you want to hear this kid's story? Let's go sit outside. You can hear his story. Then he just like opened his heart to her, just like shared his story. And I could like see like how good it was for her to like hear this kid's story and how good it was for him to share this story with someone who's like his mom. And then I went home. I was like, that was a really beautiful thing that happened. And it happened because I get to have the social media presence where people will be wanting to come to my Institute class. And so for all the crap that happens, like there's a real power in just like being able to have some kind of influence. And people ask me like, do you like being famous? I'm like, no, I don't want people to, I don't care what people know who I am, but I want to have a positive influence. And being in this space, even with all the negativity, has allowed me to build faith in people and to bring people together so they can understand each other better. And you know, when I walk to the temple every week when I work there, the prayer that I pray as I walk up that hill is, I want people to feel God's love through me today, like while I'm there. And so hopefully, like my publicness helps people to feel God's love.
Thank you, Ben. That was really beautiful.
Ben, as you were talking, I'm going back to one of the first comments that you made about being on the so-called pedestal. We see a lot of things, and I have seen the most beautiful miracles. Like I have seen like families repair. I have seen people connect with God. I have seen healing from abuse. I have seen confidence be born in people who've never had it before. I think that one's my favorite. I just love that. And I just like, I guess like you were saying, Ben, and again, like maybe this sounds like cliche, but like for all of the tumult and pain and argument in this space that I can see, like there are miracles happening every day and in different hearts and different families and different places and different countries. And there are like there are these pieces of coal that are being turned into diamonds, right? And I just see this happening, and I'm just like, you know, if this has happened, if I've seen so much in the past 3 years, what am I going to see in 10 years? And how are we going to create a community where like no one has to be ashamed of who they are or be rejected or reject themselves? And like, if I can have a small piece in that and bringing to light some of these secrets, what, you know, like wearing out my life to bring these secret things to light, like, man, like how joyous will that be? And that's what I want. I feel like that's my purpose. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to fulfill it.
It's really beautiful. I'm feeling kind of emotional right now for a few reasons. I think mostly as I reflect on this conversation, you know, kind of where we started, where rightfully so, there was an amount of like, I don't know, pain and hurt that I'm not saying has like left you completely, but there has been like a transformative element in this where I've felt within this, you know what, people who may not agree with me, I will hold space for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You have to. I
will hold space for you, and it's all right. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I believe and know, but it takes the sting out of it when someone who does want to spitefully use you, when you say to them, I will hold space for you.
And I will bless you.
And I will bless you. And I will bless your name. And I will bless your house. And I will bless the houses of your children.
And you will be in my prayers. I'm going to think about you and wish the best for you.
And I'm really moved by that. And I'm inspired by it because that's hard to do. I think sometimes people want to criticize the both of you because you do make it sound easy, because you both are so positive. Even when it's like hard, like you're positive and like you're faithful. But I just want to like emphasize that neither one of you ever said in any of these conversations that it was easy. when I asked you, how do you maintain your sense of self under scrutiny? Neither one of you said, well, let me tell you this really easy 5-step program that I do in which to maintain my sense of self. Like, there's nothing easy about cultivating a community. There's nothing easy about embracing one's purpose. There's nothing easy about looking to God or your spiritual practice and like cultivating that. That is a hard thing to do. But I am inspired. Both of you often inspire me, but I am truly inspired in this moment. That in this moment, that coupled with like your hurt, coupled with like your very real humanity, you are extending grace. And that even from like your pedestal, even from your pain, that you are seeking grace, even when it's hard, and knowing that you don't always want to extend it, that you are want to extend it. And I think that's really beautiful. Like, as your friend and like fan, like I like applaud that. Like I do, because it's hard, and I feel compelled to like share this, Ben. Like, thank you, and Charlie, for like sharing this importance of like service and all of this. I've just been like struggling personally, because I just got recently called to be in the Least Study presidency. And I've really enjoyed going to church the last few months in my new ward. I've enjoyed like going to church, showing up on time, leaving on time, having no meetings, having no like, my last calling, I was the Stake and Women's president, and like the calling before, it was just,
killed it. You were so good at it.
I've been in big callings for as long as I can remember that have required a lot of time. And I resented this last Sunday when they called me, and I did not want to say yes, because I've enjoyed going to church. For all the reasons that you've talked about in my own micro way, I don't want to serve in those kinds of callings. I wanted to have been exhausted by it, but thank you for like changing my heart in this moment with like your examples. Like it's serving me and impacting me to recognize my own role as an agent for like change and service.
Can I tell you one thing I do? And I learned this from Nephi. In the very first verse of the Book of Mormon, he says, I was highly favored of the Lord, and I've seen many afflictions in all my days. Like this, he's like honest, like things sucked and God was there. And then that happens multiple times in the Book of Mormon. There's a part in 1 Nephi 15 where he says, I consider that my afflictions were great above all, and I was overcome because of my afflictions. Like he's like, this was the hardest thing. I was overcome because it was so hard. And then the next verse he says, after receiving strength from the Lord. And I think for me, it has been so important to be honest about all of it. Like if I just said, everything's hunky-dory, it's great, like that's unhealthy for me. But if I was just like, things are terrible and they suck, like that's also unhealthy for me.
For sure.
The healthy space for me is to say, this is hard and here's what's good. Or this is good and this is also what's like allowing those two things to coexist, because it's true. Like things are good and they suck.
And what a beautiful mirror for that polarization that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so if I were you, like I have this new calling that I don't want, like part of me could be like, oh, it'll be fine, da 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 da. Or I could be like, oh, this sucks, I hate it, I hate this, I don't want to do this, blah blah blah, you know. And if I just like let one of those things win, I wouldn't be surviving or thriving. But saying, I don't want to do this, but I'm gonna do it,
you wouldn't be balanced. Yeah.
Well, it's just like it's giving me like a beautiful permission, and I hope other people listening to this feel that permission to just, I think this whole like episode was a really cool, and case study is the word that I'm like, but like an actual application of the graceful humanity like that you're asking for from others, but like just like living yourselves. You're hurt, but you're also trying your best.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I'm also hoping is that, you know, we're not alone in these feelings, right? Like we might have it a different way, or like maybe in numbers it's a little bit more dramatic, but the conflict of being an LGBTQ plus believer, child of God, is there for everyone, right? And this is just like another way that shows up. And I just want to, I guess, hold space for people who are feeling this at different levels, whether it be in their family structure or with their church leadership or their friends, these different ways where you feel simultaneously accepted and rejected, and you feel like there's expectations on you that you can't meet or you want to meet but don't know how. And, you know, like this happens in so many different ways. It's a pattern, I think, when you're in this space. And so like listening to this, I hope it's not just like, oh my gosh, like Charlie's popular and it's hard to be popular. It's like but like
So hard.
right. And how sad if that's the message, you know. But I hope it's like, oh, this is, I don't know.
Well, like these feelings that we've expressed of like joy and sadness and like people criticizing us, like and feeling rejected, like all of these feelings people are having on a micro scale in their own lives.
Well, but it's macro in their own life. You know what I mean? It like a micro scale, but that sounds diminishing to me because like this is just my life and this is how it works in my life, and that doesn't mean it's harder or worse than anybody else's life. You know what I mean?
It's just like a more public.
It's
public.
It's a different
private,
flavor, you know.
Yeah, like the same exhaustion is happening to people who are out to 5 people.
Yeah, yeah, and I hope that I can continue being emotionally resilient in this space and keep finding beauty and connection. And I also hope that anybody else listening who's craving that can also do that, and that we can take strength from each other.
That's beautiful.
And that's what I think.
Well, is there anything that you feel that you want to share that you haven't had the opportunity to share or to say?
Yeah. The only thing I want to say to add, I've already shared lots of testimonies and thoughts and all that and whatnot, but, to the people who are listening are like, what can we do to help? I think the best thing you can do to help is just like share your story, share your heart. And, I don't feel like a lot of burden on us, but if any burden there is becomes lighter as people like share too, and share their hearts as well.
Yeah.
And I say this a lot, but I'm a firm believer that the best ideas haven't been thought of yet. So if someone doesn't know what to do, pray and get some inspiration, and maybe you'll think of something no one's ever thought of.
Yeah, like I feel like for so long people have kind of looked to us for answers, but like who did we look to for answers? Other people and the Lord, and that's where it happens. I've really loved this conversation.
Me too.
I feel like I was kind of like a balloon that was like too full, but I like deflated a little bit, and now I have a little bit more bounce in me. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think this is like the beauty and like this is like the fruit of like connection and community. This is the fruit of that. This is like worth fighting for. This is worth investing in. Like those friendship is worth it.
Those nights when you have a conversation with someone and you just like wish you could hold on to it forever.
Yeah.
Like I feel like this is the exact conversation that the 3 of us would have had tonight.
Yeah.
And that just makes me so happy that it's like here.
Yeah. I really miss you guys. This has been a really wonderful experience moving to San Antonio, but I really miss you guys.
Well,
I'm really grateful for technology and that playing fights that I got to be here. But I really miss you.
Well, Sarah, when you moved away, I had no doubt that you'd be in my life for the rest of our lives. So we're with you for the long haul.
Same.
We love you.
I love you too.
Thanks for interviewing us.
Thanks for allowing me, and thanks for
Is there anything that you didn't get to say?
No, I feel like truly I understand now. I asked that question at the beginning about, well, why do people put people on pedestals? And I think it's because when you see like goodness in other people, like you want to celebrate it. And when you see goodness in other people, you want to exemplify it. And sometimes we just get a little bit mixed up. And instead of remembering that we're here to be inspired by it, we try to superimpose it onto ourselves and into other people. And so thanks for reminding that's why. So thank you for being such beautiful goodness in my lives, really, truly. And for making the sacrifices that you do to be the goodness in so many other people's lives. And I see you, and I know that it's hard, but I love you, and thank you for trusting me to be a part of your community of support and friendship.
That's so nice. I feel like blush up. Thank you. That's really meaningful.
The moms love you too.
Well, thank goodness for that little working group. Thank goodness.
Anyway, we love everyone. We're full of love. And that was the Questions from the Closet exclusive. Cutting edge exclusive ends with us being like, wow, we just love each other.
What a shock.
Oh, man. Well, I think that this happened because we held space for each other. Let's not pretend that all three of us ever agree
on everything.
Yeah. On everything, or really very rarely few things. Like, there are very few things that all three of us exactly agree on.
Yeah.
But I do think that, like, if there's something that the three of us are good at, is like holding space for each other and surrendering to the process. Mm-hmm. Sometimes in spite of ourselves. I don't think that my surrendering has always been a full act of my agency, as much as it has just been like exhaustion in the moment. I'm just like, fine, I surrender. But yeah, like I think that's why. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So hold space, you guys. You don't have to agree with us. You don't have to agree with them, but just like hold space for a progression. I hope that, like, you know, we had a lot of hopes for this, but like I hope that as you listen to this, that like you recognized the humanity and felt inspired towards grace, wherever that was. And if you're not going to like change your comment, at least like change your thinking behind it, please. Like, just, I hope that you saw the humanity and felt the grace.
Again, thank you both for this. It's been awesome, and I am excited to start doing this frequently. I've missed this. It's been, I think we've been off for like 2.5, 3 months almost.
Yeah.
And we still have a little bit more time, but we're going to come back, and I need it. Like, I love these conversations.
And season 3 starts at the end of September.
Season 4.
Oh, yeah, season 4.
We're working on it.
Season 4, maybe some more.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.